It begins as a joke, a quiet jab, just sharp enough to sting, but soft enough to deny. A look, a pause, a shift in tone. And maybe you caught it, maybe you didn't. But they were watching to see if you would. Most people let it go. They laugh along, shrug it off, say it's not worth making a scene. Until it happens again, louder, bolder, in front of more people. By the time you feel the need to respond, it's already too late. Letting it slide sounds virtuous, but in real-world dynamics, at work, in social groups, in dating, in politics, it's often the first step to becoming irrelevant. Let's say you're in a corporate meeting. You pitch an idea. Everyone nods. But then someone jumps in, rewords it, and now suddenly it's their idea. You wanted to say something, but instead you smile politely. You nod. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. Fast forward 2 weeks. They're being praised. You're being forgotten. And HR just gave them the promotion. But hey, at least you got that polite thanks for your help email, right? This is what modern betrayal looks like. It's rarely dramatic. It's subtle, clean, executed with a smile and a CC'd memo. And if you don't respond strategically, Machiavelli would say you're not just weak, you're predictable. And that's worse. Because here's the brutal truth. People test your boundaries the way sharks test for blood in water. Quiet, repetitive, almost boring until it's not. So what do most people do wrong? They wait too long. They ignore the early signs. They confuse forgiveness with inaction. They call silence grace, when really, it's just fear in a costume. The result? Your enemies aren't defeated. They're encouraged. They learn, you're safe to cross. You won't do anything. And once that reputation sticks, it's over. You'll get interrupted more, overlooked more, blamed more, excluded more. Until one day, you realize no one respects you, not because you're not smart, but because you never enforced consequences. It gets worse. When you do finally speak up, it sounds emotional, reactive, like it came out of nowhere. People say things like, "You've changed," or "Why are you being so dramatic?" No, you didn't change. You just finally noticed how long you've been getting played. This is where Machiavelli's logic cuts deeper than any modern leadership guru. He believed perceived strength was more valuable than actual goodness. You could be a generous, wise, competent person, but if people think you're soft, they'll test you like a vending machine with no security camera. You're not being ignored because you're not valuable. You're being ignored because they think you won't bite back. And they're usually right. Now here's the psychological twist. Revenge isn't just about the enemy. It's about how you teach everyone else what happens when they cross a line. The person who disrespects you, they're just the first. The real risk is the copycats. Because when people see you tolerate bad behavior, it becomes the standard. This is why CEOs fire people publicly when they need to reset the tone. Why politicians destroy opponents loudly when they want to signal dominance. Why smart people document everything, not to act, but to have leverage if they need it. Revenge, done right, isn't loud. It's remembered. So let's clarify. The problem isn't that revenge is evil. The problem is that most people either overdo it emotionally or underdo it strategically. You either go full nuclear over a text message, or you smile through betrayal while the room quietly watches your authority disintegrate. There's no middle ground, and Machiavelli would laugh at how predictably soft most people are. So what do? That's where strategy comes in. You don't react, you calculate. You ask, what power did they take from me? What signal did that send to others? What response restores my leverage without making me look petty? And then if you choose to act, you act with finality, not loud, just irreversible. Because in power dynamics, revenge isn't about winning. It's about neutralizing threats before they become patterns. And the people who survive in this world, they're not the nicest. They're the ones who know exactly when to be feared and when to disappear so cleanly no one even knows they were there. Machiavelli didn't believe in revenge, at least not in the dramatic, emotional way most people think of it. He believed in elimination of risk. That's it. If someone posed a threat to your power, to your reputation, position, leverage, or public image, your job wasn't to hurt them back. Your job was to make sure they could never hurt you again. That's not revenge. That's risk management. Let's go back to the quote. Men should either be treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. Here's what that really means. If you're going to tolerate someone, make them feel safe. If you can't tolerate them, don't slap them, remove them. If you slap them and let them recover, you've created a future enemy who knows your weakness. That's the law of revenge, according to Machiavelli. It's not about drama, it's about decisiveness. And this plays out in modern life constantly. Let's say you're a manager. One of your employees undermines you during a team meeting, not directly, but with subtle comments, sarcastic digs, eye rolls, disagreement wrapped in just offering feedback. You ignore it. Bad move. Because now the entire room is watching how you respond, not to them, but to you. You think you're being mature. They think you just got dethroned. In power games, the crown doesn't fall off, it gets taken. Here's the strategy Machiavelli would recommend. Don't react emotionally. Watch, document, gather leverage, and when the moment comes, strike in a way that closes the chapter, not opens a new one. That doesn't mean scream at them. It might mean demoting them quietly, or removing them from a key project, or promoting someone else just to sideline them. It means sending a message. That behavior has consequences. I'm not to be tested. Let's zoom out. In The Prince, Machiavelli repeatedly explains that it's better to be feared than loved, if you can't be both. Because fear creates predictability. People don't double-cross those who might retaliate with intelligence and force. They double-cross the ones who try to talk it out. That doesn't mean becoming cruel. It means becoming unavailable to disrespect. Let's translate this into a modern formula. The 3 Machiavellian rules of revenge. Rule 1. Never strike out of emotion. If you're angry, you're already losing. That means they've entered your head, and the moment you react emotionally, you hand them the script. Smart people wait. They let the other person feel safe, comfortable, overconfident. Then, when they least expect it, they remove access, opportunity, or reputation. It's not loud, it's lethal. Not in a Hollywood way, in a career-ending way. Rule 2. If you act, make it final. Revenge isn't about slapping someone on the wrist. It's about ending the power imbalance permanently. Ask yourself, will this action prevent them from repeating the offense? Will others watching understand the consequence? Will I need to revisit this again? If the answer to that last one is yes, you haven't finished the job. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to consolidate power with one swift move, not drawn-out punishment. Quick, cold, done. Think of it like cauterizing a wound. Hurts once, doesn't fester. Rule 3. Know when not to take revenge at all. Here's where most people fail. They retaliate when they're beneath the person they're targeting. You call out your boss publicly. That's not revenge. That's career suicide. You badmouth a toxic ex who's more connected than you. Now you're the crazy one. Machiavelli would laugh. Because real power isn't about expressing your pain. It's about weaponizing your position. Sometimes, the smartest revenge is elevation. You outgrow them, outclass them, outwin them, so publicly they become a footnote. That's not letting it go. That's rendering them irrelevant. And no, they never get closure, because you never gave them access again. That's cold. That's strategy. You see, in a Machiavellian worldview, revenge isn't an act. It's a calculation. Sometimes it looks like public downfall. Sometimes it looks like eerie silence. Sometimes it looks like success so loud they can't speak your name without choking on it. But it's never reactive, never emotional, but never halfway. So if you want to follow Machiavelli's laws, stop broadcasting your pain. Start protecting your leverage. And when the moment's right, end the story, not extend it. Because nothing's more dangerous than an enemy you injured but forgot to finish. And nothing's more powerful than never being the one who bleeds first. Revenge isn't just some toxic impulse from the dark side of your soul. It's biology. It's social survival. It's a primal defense mechanism, refined through centuries of evolution, that tells your nervous system, that was a threat. Don't let it happen again. You're not crazy for wanting revenge. You're hardwired. And Machiavelli didn't invent that instinct. He just studied what happened to people who ignored it. Let's look at what the science actually says. Researchers at the University of Zurich scanned the brains of participants who had been wronged in a game scenario. When given the opportunity to punish the offender, even at a personal cost, their caudate nucleus lit up. Translation: the brain treats revenge like a reward. It doesn't just feel good, it feels right. Why? Because humans evolved in tight-knit groups, where your social standing meant survival. If someone disrespected you and you didn't respond, you were seen as weak. And if you were seen as weak, you were replaced, exiled, or ignored. In tribal systems, not retaliating meant you weren't safe to follow. Fast forward to modern life. Boardrooms, group chats, dating, and the same rules apply. You get wronged. You do nothing. People watch. They make a silent note. Okay, she doesn't defend herself. It's not malicious. It's unconscious social calibration. We watch each other constantly. We interpret reactions like survival cues. Evolutionary psychologists like David Buss and Franz de Waal have shown in multiple studies that social mammals, especially humans, operate in complex dominance hierarchies. It's not about who's the loudest. It's about who enforces boundaries without flinching. You don't need to be aggressive, but you do need to signal that certain behavior has consequences. Fail to do that, you drop a level in the group's invisible pecking order. This is especially true in male-dominated environments, military units, sports teams, high-stakes offices, but it shows up everywhere. Even toddlers do it. One child hits another. The second child cries, but doesn't push back. Within hours, the first child becomes bolder. The second, quieter. Why? Because the power dynamic just got coded. Adults aren't much better. We just wear suits. Now, let's be clear. Forgiveness isn't always weakness. Studies by Everett Worthington and others have shown that letting go of grudges can reduce stress, improve heart health, and increase long-term happiness. But here's the key detail. Forgiveness works when the threat is over, not when the threat still has access to your reputation, resources, or relationships. Let's say someone publicly embarrasses you. You forgive them. That might lower your cortisol, but it also sends a social signal. I'll tolerate that. Which means, consciously or not, others will begin to test those same boundaries. That's not a grudge. That's an open loop. One that people will continue to probe until they find your limit. This is why people who get walked over at work often spiral into burnout. Not because they don't care, but because they're suppressing their natural urge to defend themselves, and their brain interprets that as helplessness. And learned helplessness is psychological poison. Want to know who gets disrespected the least? Not the person who's always kind. Not the one who always fights. The one you can't predict. Social strategist Robert Greene refers to this as the black box effect. It's the uncertainty around someone's reactions that makes others pause. If people know you'll always be nice, they'll test you. If people know you'll always explode, they'll learn to manage you. But if people never know how you'll respond, they get cautious. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when love is dependent on obligation, but fear depends on punishment which never fails." In modern terms, be kind, but make sure fear is part of your brand, not cruelty, uncertainty. The quietest person in the room, the one with boundaries, poise, and the ability to remove you without warning, commands the most respect. Not because they shout, but because no one wants to find out how far they'll go. So what does the science say? Revenge isn't just emotion, it's a social regulator. Boundaries enforced early protect long-term status. Inaction signals weakness in group hierarchies. Predictable niceness invites repeat offenses, and the most respected people are the ones who know when to forgive and when to disappear. So how do you actually apply Machiavelli's laws of revenge without looking unstable, emotional, or petty? Simple. You stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a ruler. This isn't about getting even. This is about control. It's about teaching the people around you, co-workers, friends, rivals, even family, that disrespect has a cost, a quiet, surgical cost. Here are 3 cold strategies to apply immediately. 1. Stop defending yourself. Let the consequence speak. When someone crosses you, your instinct might be to explain, clarify, post a neutral response, tell your side. Stop. That's not power. That's performance. The more you explain, the more you invite debate, the more you clarify, the more you signal guilt. It's psychological law. Defending equals submission. Machiavelli wouldn't argue. He'd act. Someone tries to undermine you at work. You don't call them out in the meeting. You wait. Document. Let them dig deeper. And then when you've gathered what you need, you have one meeting behind closed doors. And suddenly they're off the project. No email chain. No statement. Just absence. Reputation isn't what you say. It's what people see happen to the people who test you. So stop announcing consequences. Start letting people feel them. 2. Control your reaction. Don't respond. Reposition. This one sounds soft, but it's not. Let's say someone wrongs you publicly, calls you out, embarrasses you, disrespects your boundary. You don't clap back. You don't tweet. You don't overreact. You reposition. Here's how. You cut access. You move your resources elsewhere. You start giving opportunities to someone else. You block, unfollow, remove, not emotionally, but with zero explanation. Silence sends a message that no caption ever will. Because here's what power actually looks like. They reach out. You don't respond. They ask what's wrong. You act like nothing happened. They talk. You move. They beg. You're already somewhere else. This isn't about ghosting. This is about non-engagement as dominance. When you're unpredictable, they panic. When you're calm, they doubt themselves. When you don't explain, they spiral. Let them. 3. Let them live. But make sure it's in exile. Here's the one Machiavelli would smirk at the most. Sometimes, the ultimate revenge is irrelevance. You don't need to destroy someone's life. That's too obvious, too noisy. You don't want to become a villain in your own story. Instead, you make them obsolete. You build something without them. You succeed in a way they can't ignore, but aren't allowed near. You create an inner circle they no longer have keys to. You don't talk bad about them. You just never talk about them. It's not emotional. It's administrative. You remove them from your network like expired software. Quiet, necessary, permanent. And here's the twisted truth. That hurts more than retaliation. Because punishment gives people attention, but exile gives them silence. And silence is brutal when it's final. They won't admit it, but the real pain isn't being hated. It's being irrelevant to someone who used to care. That's how kings treat traitors. Not with rage, with forgetting. So here's your new internal rule book. You never let pain dictate your timing. You never correct people who know exactly what they did. You never need to look powerful. You just need to act in a way that can't be undone. Power is quiet. Revenge is slow. Reputation is built not by the offense, but by how permanently you removed the problem. And sometimes, the biggest statement is made by saying nothing at all, and watching the silence echo louder than any speech. Let others scream. Let others gossip. Let others chase apologies and explain betrayal like it's a legal case. You're a strategist now. And the people who learn to treat you accordingly will never need to meet your darker side. But the ones who don't? Well, you won't need to say a word. Most people will never admit this, but they want to be feared. Not in the horror movie way, not in the dictator way. Just enough to make people think twice. Think twice before crossing them, before ignoring them, before erasing their contributions, before treating their boundaries like optional suggestions. But here's the problem. Everyone wants that respect without having to earn it through consequences. And that's why they lose. Because in every room you walk into, there's a silent test happening. What happens if I push this person? And if the answer is nothing, then congratulations, you've just volunteered to be disrespected, repeatedly, quietly, strategically. Machiavelli understood this before modern psychology had words for it. He didn't preach revenge because he was cruel. He preached preemptive strength because weakness is rarely forgiven. Read that again. Weakness is rarely forgiven. You think people will understand when you let things slide. They won't. You think they'll respect you more if you're the bigger person. They don't. You think silence shows grace. Sometimes it does. But more often, it shows submission. And predators love submission. Not in the animal kingdom, in the boardroom, in your social circles, in your family. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to take every insult personally. But if you never push back, not even once, you train people to treat you like an empty throne. And power, it hates a vacuum. Someone will fill the space you refuse to occupy. Someone will take credit, take control, take advantage. And the worst part? They'll believe they deserve it because you never made them feel otherwise. That's not their fault. That's yours. Machiavelli wasn't romantic. He wasn't spiritual. He wasn't noble. He was realistic. He saw what happened to good men who never calculated risk. He watched powerful people fall, not because they were hated, but because they were predictable. That's what revenge really protects you from. Not from pain, not from ego, but from being seen as someone who doesn't retaliate. And you don't need to become cruel to escape that trap. You just need to become unavailable to weakness, unavailable to fake apologies, unavailable to slow burns, unavailable to people who test boundaries just to see if they're real. Let them guess how far you'll go. Let them wonder what line not to cross. Let your reputation speak louder than your defense ever could. Because if you take anything from Machiavelli, it's this. You don't win by being liked. You win by being unchallenged. And no one challenges the one who makes disappearing look casual.